Hello, we are going to discuss the Indus Valley civilization now. If you remember, we discussed the prehistoric times in the last lecture, a brief idea about all the spaces like Paleolithic, Neolithic, and Chalcolithic, and all those things. If you remember, we did talk about Indus Valley and the Harappa civilization belonging to the Chalcolithic age. So, this is actually a subset of that particular period. We need it in detail because it's the first most important event in Indian history and one of the most important spaces in ancient India, right? So it is very important that you have a very good understanding of the Indus Valley civilization, its sites, its administration, its society, its economy, whatever is there in the syllabus, everything in a very deep manner you should know. There have been multiple questions on the Indus Valley civilization for a very long time. There have been questions on the drainage. I remember from 3 or 4 years ago. That is why I think this is one of the major portions we need to know in detail in this in this exam, right? So another thing, what are we looking at here? We are, when you look at the Indus Valley civilization, what are we looking at? We are looking at the sites first. It's very important for prelims, this entire area. Sites, and also for mains also you can write about the sites, what and what, right? Then we are looking at the administration, how exactly was the entire urban system. Indus Valley is also the first urbanization, remember that, right? So the urban system that developed in the country, how was it administered, we need a bit of an idea on that. Apart from that, we do talk about the economy and society. Society is mostly based on religion, that's what we are looking at here. And finally the decline. There's one particular portion I have not included here, which is the art and culture of Indus Valley. That is a detailed area we will be covering, we will be having a separate lecture for it. I did not have the space nor the time to include it here. Fine. So that's also a very important area that we'll see now. So let's start this Indus Valley civilization. Remember, the first thing you have to know is this rough timeline 2700 BC to 1500 BC. Right? From now on, whatever we are discussing, timeline is a very important aspect, whether it's Indus Valley, Maurya, Magadha, whatever. You have to have some rough idea of the timeline. You cannot approach the question without giving any timeline and stating the facts in a very vaporized format. You have to ground it in time. At the end of the day, history is about time. Right? So it is very important that you know the timeline. Please do make a note of it. So it is between 2700 BC and 1500 BC that we have the Indus Valley civilization. What are we seeing here? We are first looking at the sites. Here we are not just plainly looking at the sites, we are also understanding what site, what was discovered. It's a very important thing for prelims and also for mains you can use this. The first important site is Harappa. It is at the bank of river Ravi. Ravi is Ravi, however you pronounce it or write it. It is one of the 5 rivers in Punjab, right? It is on the bank of the river Ravi. Currently it's in Pakistan, that's why I have PK here. And the things that are discovered here, one is the dog chasing deer artifact. It was discovered in Harappa. And secondly, more importantly, a red sandstone male torso, right? A red sandstone male torso that is also discovered in Harappa. Fine, that's a very important artifact. You see the picture of this across all textbook. If you want to see it, please do Google and see it or look at it in a textbook. I always tell you this, if you're studying art and culture, have a visual memory of it. Do look at the sites, do look at the artifacts, because that visual memory really, when you look at the visual, it really impacts your memory. It is easier for you to recollect these things. So always study art and culture with some picture or the other. There are multiple books available in the market, either from that you can look at it or online, just Google it, you will find it. Right? So anyways, Harappa and red sandstone male torso, very important artifact. Then the major site, Mohenjo-daro, which is also in Pakistan. So what do we have here? Whatever you have heard great about the Indus Valley civilization is almost from here, right? Look at it. The Great Bath, you have heard about the Great Bath, it is in Mohenjo-daro. The Great Granaries, that's also in Mohenjo-daro. By the way, granaries are everywhere. One of the bigger granaries is in Mohenjo-daro. Fine, even Harappa has granaries. Then there's a bearded priest, this thing, right? There's a sculpture of the bearded priest. You might have seen it. There's a priest with a trefoil on him. There's a shawl on which there's a trefoil. It's a bearded priest. I think some part of it is a bit broken also. You can see this image everywhere when you look at Indus Valley, that image pops up. So that is discovered from Mohenjo-daro. Another and more importantly, 2 things. One, dancing girl. You would have seen this Tribanga posture of a dancing girl, right? Something like this. I think it's called the Tribanga posture. Just find it, because there are 3 splits in that posture. I'll show it to you when we are doing the art and culture part of this. So the dancing girl is also discovered in Mohenjo-daro. Then the Pashupati seal, which we will be talking about again in when we discuss art and culture. It is a yogi kind of a figure sitting in a position where he is surrounded by animals, and this is supposed to be proto Shiva. There are multiple interpretations to this. So that Pashupati seal, right, that's also discovered in Mohenjo-daro. We'll talk about seals in detail, their utility and their aesthetics both in the art and culture part of this. Right? So that is what Mohenjo-daro is. Remember all the important things that is found here. Lothal also important. It's called the Manchester of the Indus Valley civilization. I think it's because of the textile kind of things that is there. Right? It also has a dockyard, and a rice husk was discovered in Lothal. A rice husk was discovered in Lothal. Lothal is in Gujarat. Fine. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were in Pakistan. Are in Pakistan now. Now Rakhi Gadi, the next site, a very important site lately because it is the largest site. A lot of people have a confusion that Mohenjo-daro is the largest site in the Indus Valley. That's no longer the case. Rakhi Gadi in Haryana is the largest Indus Valley civilization site. Remember that. Another important discovery that happened last year in Rakhi Gadi is that for the first time they found couple burial, right? People buried together. That is very rare in the Indus Valley excavations that had happened. We have never found it. That was found in Rakhi Gadi. Fine. Again, then there is Banavli, again in Haryana. Rakhi Gadi and Banavli are in Haryana. But the only city with radial street is Banavli. In the entire Indus Valley civilization, there is only one city with a radial street. That is Banavli. Then there is Balatal. Balatal, we have seen bangle factories there in Balatal. Then Surkotada. That's a very important place because that came for prelims last in 2017, I believe. This particular place. This is where horse bones were found. Right? Horse bones were found in Surkotada. Remember that. That's also in Gujarat. So in Gujarat we found Lothal and Surkotada. Right? Another important site is Kalibangan, however you pronounce it. That's in Rajasthan. The toy cart is found there, and a plowed field is also found there. Plowed field was found in Kalibangan. Remember this. The rice husk was found in Lothal. Plowed field was found in Kalibangan. Right? So that's in Rajasthan. And finally there is a roper which is on the banks of Satluj. A dog was buried with a human here. We do not know what is the significance of dog getting buried with a human because most of our ideas only through this. We haven't deciphered the script of the Indus Valley people. So we do not have very deep understanding of all these things. But remember, it was a dog buried with a human was found in roper. There is Dolavira, another site which is also there in Gujarat. Remember that. There's another site called Chandudaro where there is a beads factory also. I've mentioned it somewhere here. We'll see it. Fine. So remember that. So this is a very important space. Remember that. Hopefully, and especially for me, for prelims. After that, whenever you are writing a mains answer, you require a map. It's very good if you can produce a visual representation, mostly through maps. I do not subscribe to spider diagrams or those hub and spoke models. I think they are too much and it's not great to depend on them. But if you can force with a map or if you can find a map somewhere relevant, please do draw it. This is one map you can draw for the Indus Valley. This is the area in which this Indus Valley civilization is found. Also, you can mark the important places. I marked a few places here like Dolavira, Lothal, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa and Roper. But you can further add places also. I want to give you a rough idea that this kind of map is possible in the answer. So please do draw it. Alright. Now we are looking at the administration, right? The administration of the Indus Valley civilization. Since it's an urban system, the first urbanization, it has good administration. The most important thing that we see with the Indus Valley people is their town planning. What do you mean by town planning? The way in which the entire town is arranged, right? How are houses juxtaposed with each other? That's what town planning is here. What is core at the core of town planning here? We have something called the grid system. The grid system meaning you have seen grids, right? I've drawn a grid here. What happens is the streets in the Indus Valley civilization or the town of the Indus Valley civilization, they intersect at right angles. They are pretty straight, right? All the streets are straight, they are intersecting and whatnot and whatnot. How can this happen? If it was haphazardly constructed, this would not happen. It was a planned construction. That's why we have a grid system here, and that is why we are calling it an urban system, because there's a planned urbanization at the core of Indus Valley. Remember that, right? So streets cut each other in a perpendicular manner. And for a town, there are two spaces. One is citadel, which is constructed at a height. Okay, And then there is a lower town where most of the people live. There are small houses there. This also gives us an idea that might be there is some hierarchy here. People who live in citadel are in the social hierarchy higher than people who are living in the lower town. So remember that citadel and lower town. There are two ways in which the town is split, right? This is seen across the Indus Valley cities, but there are some exceptions. I do not remember which ones, but most of the Indus Valley cities, whether it's Dodolagra, Lothal, or Harappa or Roper, there is higher probability of such a structure to be found. Now, what is this? Burnt bricks were used in construction. Most of the houses were constructed with burnt bricks. Fine. And the most important feature of this entire town planning was the drainage system they had. They had a drainage system which was underground and it was covered with slabs. It's an extremely sophisticated system for some civilization that existed in, let's say, 2700 BC. That sophistication in drainage is not found across the world at that point in time. So it's a very important idea that we should be knowing, the important feature that we should be knowing, which is the underground drainage system. Also, they also had communal spaces where they came together, like the great bath, right? There was a ritual bathing in a great bath. Great bath was a great structure at the center of the town. It also had, I think, burnt bricks at the bottom of it, and water was filled. So that also ritual bathing did take place there. So that's mostly with the administration. We saw town planning and how towns were structured and with what towns were most of the houses were built, and also about the great underground drainage system. Right? You can use these kind of facts even in paper, let's say paper 3 or paper 2, paper 1 itself in social issues, if they are asking about how sanitation etc. is. In the introduction of that question, you can use Indus Valley. India has been a culture where sanitation took a very important, was seen as a very important dimension in civilization. We can see Indus Valley for that. So don't think art and culture or ancient is just a static thing. You can use it in the social issues or any other economy based answers also. Remember that most of the introductions, if you fetch it from here, you will get no marks. Remember that, right? Great. Anyways, continuing. Economy wise, we see both agriculture and industry here and trade. Okay, agriculture is mostly I have not written exactly what it is there. There is rice cultivation, there is wheat cultivation, barley cultivation, etc. On the other hand, when it comes to the industry, there are artisans. Okay, there are specialized group of people, what you call shreni later on, or what is called a guild system, which will develop much later in the medieval era or in the later ancient times. But the initial part of such a system, right, where there are a class of people doing a particular job. There are brick makers, stone cutters, boat builders. So specialized group of people doing specialized jobs, we can see it in their economy. Another thing was in manufacturing, there was bead manufacturing. I told you about this. Chandudaro is a major city where bead manufacturing was happening. Another thing is that it was not a very closed economy. It's not an autarky or anything. They had trade. They had foreign trade with Mesopotamia, Afghanistan, and Iran. So gold is one of the major commodities we were importing. Copper is another commodity that we imported. Even silver we did import. We exported most of the agricultural products. How do we know that we did have trade? The seals which are part of the Indus Valley were also discovered in Mesopotamia, right? So we know then our traders would have gone there, and that is how the presence of such seal is there. The seal is a particular thing we will see later. It is some kind of a small square shaped substance which is used as a trademark for a trader, right? So when a trader goes from here to there, it is his or her trademark which is given there, right? So that's what a seal is. We'll see that in detail when we discuss the agriculture part. So that's with the economy. We understood the economy was there was a multitude. It's not a singular economy. There was industry and agriculture and all kinds of trade. Remember that, and the rest of the things which we saw. Right? Society. The major dimension through which we are looking at society is religion, because that is something that is very common across the ancient world and the medieval world. Society is mostly religious. Some or the other, it may not be very institutionalized religion, but some or the other form of religion did exist almost all the time. Right? So in religion, what are we seeing? We are seeing fertility worship. Fertility worship was very common in the Indus Valley civilization, and this has taken two forms. One is the mother goddess. This is if you have gone to if you go to Delhi, there is something called the National Museum. If you go to the National Museum, you can see all this in a very visual format. If you do go to Delhi, do there. So you can see all these things. The mother goddess, we'll see her in detail when we look at the agriculture part. She's made of terracotta, and this is actually mother in the sense the harvester, right? The earth giving fertile. Earth is pretty fertile and gives harvest, right? So mother goddess is worshipped. Another worship which is also related with fertility worship is the linga worship, which we see even today, Shiva worship and all. The linga worship is also there. They practice both burial and cremation. They did burn their bodies and also they did bury their bodies. So both were practiced. They also worship trees and animals also. So once you worship trees and all, there's a bit of naturalism and animism in these spaces. So I hope that is pretty clear. Finally, it did decline by 1500 BC. It did decline. We do not exactly know what is the reason of decline because there are multiple theories. There is Aryan invasion theory. There are other theories also that are natural decline. We do not know, right? So there is no conclusive evidence on what caused the decline of Indus Valley. It did decline, and there's a particular period of complete vacuum or a space which we do not exactly know what had happened. And the next time when we come, when light shines upon history, we then see other spaces like the Vedic age. That's what the next space we can talk about is. In between whatever has happened, we are not exactly sure. And history depends on evidence and reasoning, so we do not comment on that part. I hope you are pretty clear here. I'm going to summarize this once. What did we see? We saw Indus Valley civilization. We saw what are the sites of Indus Valley civilization. We saw that what kind of administration it had, town planning, how streets intersected each other, how there was a grid system. And town was split between citadel and lower town. And then we had the Great Bath, wonderful underground drainage system. Then we looked at the economy. We had trade, agriculture, everything. We had particular set of men and women dedicated for particular jobs. That has been the specialized group of artisans, brick makers, stone cutters, whatever. And then we also had foreign trade. Society, we saw how religion was there, how the dead were buried or cremated. Fine. So that's with the society. And finally, how did it decline? I hope it is clear. This is the first part of the Indus Valley lecture. We'll come back with art and culture.